Hey guys, it's the Nerdy Movie Guy. So today I'm going to be reviewing another horror movie, The Evil Dead. Now, I'm going to be reviewing the original one. So the copy I have, I purchased this probably a little while ago, is The Evil Dead, The Groovy Collection. Now, unfortunately, there are just a lot of TV shows I've been watching, and I just don't know if I have the attention span or the patience to invest in another TV show. So even though this edition comes with it, I don't know if I'll be getting around to that, at least for a while. But I watched the first movie, I've watched the second movie, now I want to review them both. So for this video, we'll be talking about the first one. Now I have seen the version in 2013 first, so I won't really try to compare them too much because a lot of people will compare the new one to the original. I'll sort of be doing the opposite in just a couple of aspects, only because there were a lot of pieces to the story and scenes from the movie that were in both. So the first thing that was a little noticeable in this movie is when the characters are sort of all interacting, there's just a lot of just chit chat. There's not a lot of meaningful conversations. There's not a lot of character growth about their personal journey or where they've been. So I just struggle to connect with these characters on a personal level. It is a horror movie, it is a slasher. So I know the purpose isn't to connect with all of the characters, but that is one thing I thought that the 2013 version did just a little bit more, is you do get a little bit more of a personal story with those characters versus this one. Regardless, this was still an entertaining movie. So that's one thing I noticed. I did struggle more with connecting with these characters than some of the other movies in this Evil Dead franchise. Now, the next thing with the monsters, the demons, creatures, you name it. The thing for this movie is, I don't know how to describe it the way I'm thinking it, but whether it was the practical effects or a mask or the makeup, whatever they used for this movie, I feel like it just had sort of an almost unrealistic look to the point where it almost looked too goofy to take seriously, to the point where I wasn't scared by any of the creatures, which then takes me out of the intensity and the stakes when I'm not feeling any dread or fear from these monsters and creatures. So unfortunately, I just couldn't be fully invested because of that reason alone. There's a lot of goofiness to it, and there's a lot of laughing and cackling going on for an extended period of time, and gets creepy a little bit, but because of how the characters looked, or how the monsters and creatures looked, it just wasn't scary enough to feel the dread or fear that the characters would have. So that was one thing I noticed in this movie. You have Bruce Campbell playing Ash. He's a great character. I think he's about the only one getting good character development in this movie and the franchise as a whole. That to the point where you just, connecting with one character is great, but you also want to connect with more. There are so many different types of movie fans out there that want to connect with more than one kind of character. And the fact that you're extremely limited in this movie just loses the drive to be more invested than probably a lot of other fans out there probably were, more so than me. So that was one thing about this movie, was harder to connect with characters, harder to feel the emotions you're supposed to feel from the creatures and monsters. Now, for the story, if you compare this one to the 2013 one, you still have the Book of the Dead, and of course, the difference in years, of course, the visuals are going to look different. It's going to look more modernized, a little bit more real in the updated version. However, in this one, I think the concepts and the ideas that were in this movie were so great and for its time original. So I think that's something worth being noted in this movie. It is very interesting, the whole concept behind the Book of the Dead, how they come across it, and how the evil forces are put into play accidentally through the character's eyes, and they don't really realize what's going on until it's too late. So with everything going on, that wasn't even really their fault entirely. You do get a sense of dread from that, because anyone put in that kind of situation, you want to root for them anyway. So that was one positive with this movie, is I did start rooting for the characters. like I said, I just couldn't unfortunately be invested in their personal stories. So in this movie, like I said, it is a slasher. So we are losing our characters one by one. And when we get toward the closing, toward the final stand for the movie, it does try to pull out the emotions a little bit. At that point, I feel like I was a little bit invested. I was invested in Ash. I just wasn't invested in the other characters. So when we get to our climax in the end, of course you're rooting for him. And by this point in the movie, the creatures, you kind of just turn your brain off of what they look like. We've sort of accepted the goofiness. But at this point, since you're invested in Ash, you're just rooting for him the rest of the movie. And there are things that happen, that are, situations forced on him where his reaction is very clever and creative for this movie with the kills, every reaction, and just him being resourceful with what's around him. Those parts of the movie were interesting. And like I said, it just happens to him more and more toward the end. So that was another positive with this movie. So it also had a very strong ending. Had an ending that was literally a cliffhanger. And at first, I wasn't sure where the second movie was going to pick up. If it would pick up at the exact moment, or maybe there's some time jump and you learn what happened at that moment later on in the movie. We'll talk about that in the next video. So for this movie, overall, I did enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the horror movies I would consider some of my favorites, but it was still generally enjoyable. I liked it. The goofiness sort of is part of its charm. So it's one of those things, either you like it or you don't. So like I said, the biggest problem with this movie, there's just not a lot of character stories or development to become fully invested. Overall, it's entertaining. If you're a horror fan and you've been wondering about watching this movie, I would say give it a chance. Bruce Campbell has a pretty neat performance, and his character is still worth watching the movie for. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.